I'm going with I forgot my hat today. I forgot to shave. I got here. I forgot a lot, but we're here.
And here we are. Good morning, everybody. I'm Kyle here with Mike Meyer. We're doing our Friday mornings coffees at MMI. In case you didn't pick up on that, Mike is heading out on vacation here in about a week and has got the pre-vacation look going where you're kind
Yeah,
of the midnight oil, huh?
I'm rallying. I'm rallying the inner vacation. I'm trying to go for the lack of shaving because we're gonna go. I'm not a water person. I don't know. Brienne's laughing at me right now. I'm not a. I'm more of like you know what a mooring ball is?
I do not know what a
A
morning
mooring
ball.
ball is like a floating buoy that when you sail, you hook your instead of dropping anchor for the night, you you take your anchor rope kind of a thing, and that you hook it to this mooring ball, and the ball is chained to a big concrete block on the seafloor.
Sure.
And it's so anchors don't tear up all the seafloor and the coral and the life. So I'm more like the concrete ball or anchor, sinker to the mooring ball. I sink. I I don't float. So yeah, I'm trying to tap into my inner sailor and water person. So I'm gonna grow like this huge beard in the next 3 days. And yeah.
So next time we chat, it's going to be with the Gordon Fisherman, is what I'm hearing.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have a peg leg.
Cool. We'll get
Like
you the yellow
I'm
coat and the hat to go with it.
yeah. I'm gonna be like, Arr, and I'm gonna have. Yeah, I do like. I'm not a. We're going sailing, so Brienne's family is like they'll do this once every 5 years or so,
Uh,
and so, but it's kind of cool because like if you look at like I never knew this because I'm not repeat not a water guy, but if you look at a sail, they have these little tufts of string on the sails, and the sails like if you watch like aerodynamics like Ford versus Ferrari when they put all the yarn tufts on the skin of the GT40 to see the airflow.
yeah.
They've been doing that for like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years on sails. So when you get the angle of the boat right in relationship to the oncoming wind, those strings on the sail will have a nice fluid flow back on the sail. But when you get the angle of the sail slash boat wrong in correlation to the wind, the little string will flutter and drop. And that's when your airflow detached from the sail. And you want to get that string to be up back tight and taut with the airflow on the sail. So I'm like watching this sailing stuff my father-in-law is telling me about, and I'm like, that's like racing stuff, and it's absolutely rear wing stuff. And he's like, well, where do you think you guys got it?
Huh.
Because he's not a racer. He's just, and I was like, oh, I guess so. Everything comes from sailing. It's like crazy.
Uh-huh.
But
Okay.
I'm still not a sailor though.
Turns out there's some old tricks that you can teach new dogs, huh?
Well, something like that. More like a sinking buoy that likes learning about it.
Fair enough. So this morning, speaking of old dogs and new tricks, I was hoping to talk about something that was brought up during last week's conversation. Specifically, during that conversation, we were talking about the Boss 302 manuals and how these old school books are actually still surprisingly relevant today. I Googled the book and started reading part of it, and it's really kind of interesting how the cage design, everything all looks very familiar to what we have today. Um, the thing that brought up for me, though, from a question perspective, is how has modifying cars changed over time? So what's interesting is at your guys' shop, you have effectively the same car separated by about 50 years. So old blue is a 65 and new blue is a 2017. And
Mm-hmm.
you've done a lot of work to modify both of those. I'm kind of curious from someone who's been hands-on with both of those platforms and both of those years, how has modifying a car changed over the course of the last 50 years?
Well, I actually, when we got the 17, it was really exciting because we really wanted to jump into a new, and a current pool, a current new group of people. We put a tremendous amount of work into that 17. I mean, dude, like a lot. Like we became part of this tech exchange program with Ford where we could submit requests for all the SolidWorks files for large sections of the car. So the old design work, let's just say, I guess this is the front side. This is the very beginning of what we started seeing that was different. When we started designing parts for the old Mustangs, we would take something like a part, like say we're gonna make a shock tower brace, and we'll cut patterns on a bandsaw, or maybe we'll cut yeah, we start with a bandsaw, honestly, and some sheet metal, maybe some cardboard, and you make a pattern, and then you make a metal part off that. Then you bend some tubing, and then you bolt it all on, and you tack it all on to the car, acting like the car is your fixture, right? Then you take that part off of the car, and then you make a fixture off of that part, and then you can replicate said part theoretically.
Okay.
But you would run into little things like when we bolted the brackets to the car and then we clamped the tube to the bracket before we welded it. We didn't realize we put stress on that union between the bracket and the tube by clamping it. So when we pulled it off of the car, one bracket goes boing, but then we go over and replicate that boing unknowingly perfectly on a fixture. And so we said, these cars aren't exactly the same because you can see this on this side and that on that side. When actually, it was our outside influence shifting things. Whereas when we came to doing everything on the 17, we could email Ford and say, can you send us 2 shock towers and a motor, and then please, then we'll go and search multiple different intake manifolds, upload all those to digital files, and then we can build our shock tower brace, say, digitally through whatever median you want, SolidWorks or whatever. You could build it in a digital file or on a virtual car, and then you create all your flat patterns, you create your tube dimensions, everything digitally, and then you give it to the shop and say, make this tube like this. Mm-hmm. And then you could actually build then in the computer a fixture off of your part. Everything virtually that we did before. And the crazy thing is, it's like, it reminds me of like, okay, it must have been like what the first pilots felt like when they were flying via instruments. Mm-hmm. You had to believe that you were going to end up in the right spot because over here you're doing it by hand. You see what you're doing, but you're kind of fudging it the whole way. Whereas with SolidWorks, you're so much more sharp initial on the point. So the first lower control arms we made were like on point. The first camber kit we did was on point. We did a complete custom strut assembly that was all of our own design. We're using internal pistons and shafts from JRI. Kind of badass, dude. Like it was a ton of work, but it was so clean. So on the front side, manufacturing was completely different, right? I didn't want to keep yapping, but on the back side, when we started trying to tune it and drive it, that's where I started having challenges. I think one year we got done with the year and I counted up, I was in 22 different states in one summer, racing and driving and doing things with the 17. And I remember I was flying back from an event and I wrote like a little blurb. I used to write a bunch on the airplane, and And it was, is this me or is it the car? Because I started noticing I'm trying to hit my points. I'm trying to drive and and hit my apex or do this or do that. And it wasn't doing what I was wanting. And I've done a lot of tuning, I've done a lot of suspension, and it wasn't reacting the same. So I started getting out of the box. I remember racing in Colorado one time, and I had this ginormous rear sway bar trying to get the pile of crap to turn. And I came to the conclusion that no matter how hard I tried to make the car turn, I learned through research that the yaw control, where you push the off button for traction control, it's never off. By by the rule of the government, no matter how much you push that button, no matter how many seconds you hold it down, no matter how much you see the little squiggly lines showing the car's traction control is off, it's always on. And it's on in the sense that when you slide into a turn, the brake modulation will constantly square the car up. So now all of a sudden, you as a driver not knowing this, you start augmenting your braking points. You start doing different things to get yourself to get to where you want to be. And the funny thing is, I came from an analog world and I'm going into this digital world, whereas a lot of drivers today never drove analog.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, and
they don't even go
that's
ahead.
that's what I want to touch on too before we start getting into the feel and the difference between that, because you're at a weird spot where you are an old school craftsman. You are still building these parts primarily by hand. Although I think you've come to see the value of having CNC machining and having computer programming and the ability
Yeah.
to run that overnight. Um, my question is, as you start to build these parts, as you start to see how clean a digital setup can be, but how much work a digital setup can be, is that becoming a limiting factor for the guy doing it at home? I mean, is that something the guy at home should be excited about, or is that something the guy at home should be nervous about? Because that barrier to entry now is seemingly more difficult, right? It's not just guess and check, stick it in, fit anymore. There's a lot more tools involved, which, to your point, can enable a whole lot of cleanliness, a whole lot of quick production, but there's a big learning curve involved there.
I don't know if it's quick production. I think that that's I wouldn't go with that. Um, I would say there was a tremendous amount of hours that Craig, our engineer, spent on these assemblies. If you were to sit there and say, okay, Craig, I want you to weld together this fixture and I want you to weld together this part, it probably would be faster on the front side. But on the backside of mass production or producing a lot of them, it's not faster. So if you're going to build one, two, three, five, just hand making it like old school is going to be probably the fastest way. But if you're doing it as a business to produce fixtures and repeat the products and get processes and multiple employees to be able to read your mind, what Craig did was the best. Now, so it's really like, what is it faster for? Right. So I don't think it's faster for the individual singular moment for the person in the garage. And if the person never if the person never drove a carburetor, then he's not missing anything because he's never experienced it. So the people of today, as someone who was born in 1992 is never really, there's no value for what they might be losing. You know what I'm saying? There's no
There's Do you think there's a lot of value in that? Do you think the newer guys are missing out on that sort of guess, check, twist, fit, bop it, twist it, slap it kind of approach to engineering these things?
Well, okay. I'm gonna modify what you're saying there. I'm gonna bend that.
Okay.
I think they're absolutely missing out on imagination and development in their own right. If you're in your garage and you want to do something and you want to do your own thing, I often tell my son, your brain is a muscle. It's not just an organ. It's a muscle. And if you don't exercise that muscle, then it's like the old thing. If you don't use it, you lose it. So if you don't exercise imagination, if you don't set aside time to daydream, then you're going to lose the skill set of letting your brain go, right? If you don't realize that you could pick up a Bridgeport from a school that decides that ROP or shop is no longer important for our kids, you could buy a Bridgeport that can do phenomenal amount of cool things. You can make sway bar pillow blocks. You can make sway bars. You could fly cut cylinder heads. Dude, there's so much stuff you can do with the Bridgeport. Like, and the Bridgeports you could pick them up for $1,200. Sometimes you can get them for free because they're heavy enough that people don't know how to move them, but it can fit in your garage. And they have all sorts of different sizes. So a guy with a 2-car garage can set up a little lathe, a little Bridgeport, and a MIG welder, and you could let your brain go and you can create and imagine. And I think that's what I'm so thankful to have been able to experience. And when you see new upcoming people, they debate what's the best part to buy. And I'm looking at all the parts on the market, and a lot of them are whitewashed. And you're like, all of those kind of suck. It's like, yeah, none of those are really rad. Why are you guys even thinking that's cool? And they're like, they don't even realize that there's a beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense, kind of?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think that, yeah, everybody kind of calls me like a hopeless romantic in that regard. But I really think that the fact that you built your Mustang in your garage, I mean, there was a lot of knuckle busting, a lot of irritation, a lot of times you're like, what the hell was Meyer thinking? But I mean, at any point, do you really wish that to have not happened?
I don't know. There's a bit of a struggle there, right? I mean, I started my project before, I'm going to date myself here, before YouTube was really a thing, right? And so I didn't come from a car family. I didn't have a background in manufacturing or even in learning how to weld, right? And so a lot of what I did, at least in the early days, was read on forums and guess and check, right? Go out and just practice by doing. And what that resulted in was, I think, a better understanding of, how to do a process, how to weld, how to connect panels, how to do that sort of stuff. But at the cost of those first few welds weren't very good. And the first shot at really working on the car probably wasn't all that great. I mean, my first restoration, right, was high school into college with no money at all and a Harbor Freight flux welder. And then the car kind of fell apart when I went to college and had to do it all over again. But it was a learning process. And so I think there's a lot of value to a lot of the new technology that's coming to the game. But I worry that that technology is being used as a sort of scapegoat, if you will, for just getting out and learning and trying and failing at doing something, right?
Well, I guess my question, you kind of, I want to ask you again. I mean, would you take back those knuckle busting nights now from where you're sitting? Would
No,
you?
no, not at all. You've got to learn by doing, right?
But at the moment, you're like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Covered in
And it's
dirt and
frustrating.
burning yourself, and yeah, it's
You get a dingleberry in your ear and you're like, this is stupid. you know? But that, I always say it's not the destination, it's the path traveled. It's your experience, and so when it comes to the new car stuff, you know, I started looking at it saying, well, look, my car goes into ice mode because the speed stop challenges in Optima were always in a dog leg. And I started making spring changes. You'd go small sway bar, big springs on New Blue because you really needed that inside wheel to stay down. So you didn't lighten the tire up so you didn't upset the ABS. but that wasn't, in that circumstance, the fastest setup, right? You were starting to change your spring packages to accommodate some engineers' idea of keeping grandma straight when she hits a slick patch in Michigan and the front of the car goes into the dump truck in front of her or something, right? And so here I am making spring changes based on government regulations, not to how fast I can get this car around a course. You know what I'm saying? So I think I was aware of that. And everybody else, I feel like, not everybody, but a lot of people fell right in the line. Oh, this is just what these cars like. This is just how you have to do it. No, no, don't fall in the line. Find out why it's doing that and let's make it better. Let's not just do what the man gives us. I've always been against the grain like that, right? Um, so I absolutely, I started realizing at first I was kicking myself like, is this me or is this the car? Because it was just this hue. It was like a fart. It's like I can't see it, but I can smell it. You know, it's but so then I started sitting there going, I'm gonna take that ABS unit and I'm gonna throw it in the garbage, you know, um and I think it wasn't that ABS is bad. It was to get a baseline. I couldn't get the right. If I put larger calipers on the car, which I tried, the computer would limit the rear brakes via the computer module in the ABS unit. So it didn't matter how big of calipers I put in the back. It didn't matter a lot of stuff. The computer would just go around it.
Was this
And
something the computer told you, or did you just experience this?
oh yeah, I just started experiencing it. I said, well, okay, so if there's only so much pressure going to the rear circuit and I can't get the car to rotate like I want, um, well, I'll just put a caliper in the back with a larger piston so I get a little more squeeze to that location with the same pressure.
Hmm.
And and there was no difference.
Huh. So
And I
effectively,
started,
what you're saying is that some people who have made these changes might be blissfully unaware that the changes they've made really aren't making any difference.
yeah, and there's all sorts of different revs of ABS units. There's, oh, the 2019 version is better than the 2017 version. Oh, you know, did you track pack one? Well, the fact of the matter is, any of those, if they're sold on the highway from Ford to the highway driving public, they are relegated by the government to do a certain thing. And that's not fast around a track. It's better, you know, it's like, good job. You know, it's that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to kick ass and take names. I'm not here for yay, everybody's a winner. No, no. So like, um, so then you could go to say the Bosch systems, and you spend a minimum of $7,000 to $8,000 to start. And you replumb the car and you do all that, or you could do the new BMW E36 conversion everybody's doing right now, and that's your $7,000 all-in system with your wiring harness and all that. And they're good. They're definitely good once you get to more of a tunable platform, you know. But there again, you have to recognize that there are these thresholds. Um, and the driving public is obviously very good. Everybody's always going to make the most of what they have. Um, you know, but it's funny because I've had a number of customers and they're starting to catch up, friends and customers, where they're like, oh well, just just change your brake pads, or I put ABS on my car. But now they're starting to realize volume displacement makes a big difference in whatever your braking system. You have to have the right baseline, then you add the right topping onto it. So, anyways, back with modifying new cars today. Um, Such a different world. If you want to tune your car, um, like I remember the first couple tunes I got, I was a ticket number for an email. I had an email that I would send in. This is my customer number, and I would have to wait several days to get a response. Huh? No, no, I'm going racing tomorrow. I just got my car together and I'm supposed to email you and wait several days for a response for a mediocre tune back. Oh no, no, you can get someone else. You can hire someone for like $800 to talk to you to get you a bass tune, and they'll get it to you quick. And I got a buddy who knows a guy, and he's the best guy. Dude, you know how many best guys I've heard of?
Okay, but I'm going to fight you a little on this point. I'm going to
Mhm.
devil's advocate for this one because on the other side of the coin, as someone who doesn't know carburetors backwards, forwards, and sideways, I got to take it to a shop, to a guy who knows a guy who's going to jet the thing right and make sure that the carburetor's working the way that it's supposed to
Well,
because it's not
let
working well
me.
for me either. And so
No,
is
no,
it
no,
a case of the technology is better or worse, or is it just a case of we don't know tech as well as we know carbs?
no. I think it's this. Okay, I'm in my 17 and I'm going into the slalom, and I want to drop the throttle to get the nose into a slalom,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't. It's kind of lazy and it pushes going in. So I go to my tuner and I say, hey, I notice that when I'm on the freeway and I lift off the throttle, it keeps a certain percentage of throttle for a few moments to burn off the excess fuel for EPA reasons. I want to, when I lift off the throttle, I want that thing to shut down so I get the compression braking and I can get the nose into a solid. I can get that response I'm looking for. So he does. He shuts that off, but now I got a quarter throttle of nothing on acceleration. He goes, oh, they're connected. Once you get rid of this one, then you have that one. But I realized that at the track. And I tow to Vegas and it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I've got this D cell, but he goes, oh, I can't separate those out unless you go to a complete standalone.
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas with a carburetor, I don't know how to get rid of that stumble, right? Because I'm not a carburetor guy. But there's this thing called a book, and you can open up the book and you can go to the base settings with your screwdriver and you can fix it yourself right now. And you don't have to wait for your ticket and or your email number, or nor do you have to buy another multi-$1,000 standalone in which you have to pay someone else to do a wiring harness for. This to me is, it's just a new thing. I mean, like, and everybody today, they're good with, here's my laptop, here's my system. You know, Meyer, you can just get your own pass-through deal and you can just log in, which you can. And I remember this 25 years ago with watching all the tables and all the fuel tables. And I really think that I'm not against fuel injection. I really am not. I think, but as like you said earlier, it's what are the people, what are they realizing? What are they getting? Sorry about that, lost track, but like they don't even realize what they're missing. It's natural to wait. This tune is perfect. I got it from Bob's Hot Rod Shop. It's perfect. And they're driving around this weird thing and they don't even know they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is it's like dang.
So in a way, then what you're saying is working on an old car is foundational, right? It gives you a sense of what driving a car is like without all of the modern nannies that are there to save us from ourselves, right? And that your issue with trying to tune and work around those nannies is that they're always there in some way, shape, or form until you decide to completely replace the technology effectively that drives them.
Right. And if I were to train my son or my daughter or the next upcoming person, I would absolutely take the approach of start here. See your mistakes. Don't cover them up with ABS. Why is it that you need to get your foot off the brake before you get into the turn? You know, when you step on the gas, why would you, let's just say you have a drive-by wire set up and you want to stand on the gas and you want to open the butterfly in your throttle body a certain amount, and you don't even realize that the amount you step on the gas opens a butterfly a certain amount, and then what it does, it has a certain amount of velocity to the motor, to the airspeed, and so therefore you have a certain thrust or application of, of torque. And so if you can't feel that by mechanically stepping on a carburetor and having all four barrels open up and then killing any RPM rate gain, because you killed the velocity, then once you feel that and you realize it, then when you go to your computer in your new car to tune it, you're keen to this. Mm-hmm. You're aware of this airspeed velocity. When you go, it was funny. I was talking to this one tuner and he's like, okay, so you have this big throttle body, but the new cool thing is these twin butterfly throttle bodies. And it's like what everybody's going to, man. And I'm like, that's like 1980.
So blow your mind. I got 4 of them on my car.
Well, yeah. The funny thing is they had all these different versions where we had a slider plate for like where you let air pass. So instead of having a butterfly, they'd have a slider plate. Okay. They had these flaps on this one intake that would do this. And so really what the engineers for developing velocities and airspeeds and engines did was they figured out that there was a way that was very intuitive to the driver. It was linear, and then the airspeed was controlled very cleanly through a certain kind of air inlet. And the one constant was multiple individual throttle bodies, like Weber's or individual fuel injection, because what you can do is you can control the velocity going into that port very efficiently. But when you have one big flap, it's a very non-linear flow of air into the motor. Sure. And so what a lot of these guys are doing is they're controlling that through the drive-by-wire, slowing and speeding up that throttle blade application. And I'm not an exact engineer on this, so I can be mucking this up a little bit, but they're starting to manipulate that blade because it's inconsistencies. And it's like they forgot about these multiple smaller ports that can keep velocity going. And now they're like, and if we get rid of the big one, we can go to 2 smaller ones and it's even better. It's like, oh my God, dude. It's like you guys aren't reading. Yeah. So like if I'm teaching my son, it's not that I want him to stay in carburation forever. It's not what I'm trying to do. It's just to your point, there's these fundamentals that's really good to know. So when you go into this new world, at least you're like, hey, actually you can do this with that and you can get more out of it, because I experienced the basics versus just this is what the man gave me. This is the best I can do.
So are you excited or annoyed about future tech developments?
No, there's some pretty rad stuff. There's really, really, really cool stuff. The ability to be able to maximize every moment of each subject is really making a big difference. If you stand back and look at what's better about today's cars, I mean, legitimately out of a 302, like a Coyote motor, 500 horsepower out of a 302 at the crank, it's kind of rad, dude. And you look inside a 302 or a Coyote, how light and small the valves are, the fact that you could spin this motor to 7,500 RPM, those things are pretty phenomenal, pretty cool. But so that's really neat. The other thing that's really cool is, I mean, if you look at what's making a lot of these cars faster, the cars are huge. The cars are really big compared to the old cars. And this is, I think, also important to not like understate, because everybody's like, oh man, the new car is so much faster. Well, yeah, dude, they've got limiting rules back in like the 80s on Trans Am cars. You couldn't go wider than 80 inches because the wider you went, the faster the car went, the less it loaded the tire up. Now these cars stock are almost 80 inches wide, whereas back in the day, the cars were 68 inches wide. So yeah, the new technology is making them faster. You're getting much more efficient use of RPM range and understanding of the power. But if you start looking at it, the gross stuff, like let's just I really think Chevrolet did a great job with the Camaro. Um, the Camaros just kicked the crap out of Mustangs, in my opinion. The Camaro had a small motor. The LS motor is much smaller, so it's easier to turn left to right. They kept it a push rod motor because there's less parasitic loss. Um, they built cubic inches into it. If you look at a 427 making 600 horsepower on pump gas, it's kind of rad, dude. You sure you got a 302 and a Ford, but it only makes 500, and it doesn't matter that it's a 302 making 500 horsepower, which is pretty good. It's really great, but it's still not 650 horsepower. It doesn't matter, you know. But what Camaro did do really good was they progressed their ABS systems, I believe, much better. They have their motor set further back. It's tighter, it's lower. The car's wide, and they had a really aggressive marketing system, or I mean, development system in there. They have like a club. I don't know if I told you about this. The engineers at Chevrolet have a club where if you're in engine, I don't know what group it is in Chevrolet, but you can take you can join a club within Chevrolet, and you can race a Camaro or a Cadillac or whatever you got there, and you can modify that within the parts that are available within Chevrolet. And you can make that car faster and faster and faster as a GM employee in this GM club.
Okay.
And then what you can do is if you believe that you want something else, you have to submit paperwork saying, I believe we need this in our catalog.
Okay.
So they have this internal group of rogue club engineers that come at it from their own perspective, not just what the man wants.
Kind of a skunk works of sorts.
Yeah, they showed up to nationals one year with something like 15 cars. Cadillacs, Corvettes, Camaros, all sorts of stuff. And the Cadillac engineers wanted to kick the crap out of the Corvette, or you know, out of the Camaro guys. And it was this whole development system. And so I really think, yes, I'm stoked about the future. Yes, there's a lot of great development going on. And it's crazy how fast these cars are getting. It's legitimately like pretty bonkers because they have these think tanks. And I guess I just encourage people to not follow the leader so much. I mean, look at the guy who's the fastest, not your buddy. You know, if the Chevrolet guys are fast, then why are they fast? What are they doing? Don't just say, oh, well, they're this and blow them off. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is it that we need to do to be better? And and then have that bandwidth to imagine. Go get a Bridgeport. Go get a lathe. Use that muscle on your head, you know. And if you're into fuel injection and you're into tuning and all that stuff, and you can come up with a way to make your own simple wiring harness and your own way to adapt a 4-barrel throttle body to the front of your Shelby intake, kind of rad, dude. Like, I'm super stoked about people who think about things pragmatically and with actual cause and effect versus I do this just because that's what the coolest thing Holly has in her catalog. Does that make sense, kind of?
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you this then. Knowing what you know and knowing that on today's market, what a ratty tatty 65, 66, 67 Mustang is 8, 9, 10 grand probably with rust repair and everything still needing to be done. Whereas, you know, a what 2010, 2011, 2012 Mustang is 15, 16, 17 ish. Which one are you picking up to start for your next project? You know, where do you begin? Which car are you going to favor if you had to build one today?
It's who are you ever watch that movie Cars?
The animated one?
Yeah.
Good chow.
You can't you can't tell Mater to be a new F450.
Uh-huh.
Mater is not a new F450. No matter how much you try to make Mater a 450, it wouldn't be right. I'm the first one on the new road, right? But in this beautiful leather King Ranch thing,
Uh-huh.
it's not right. And then, although McQueen, right, which is
Yeah.
sorry,
Lightning. It's
McQueen,
Lightning Queen.
Lightning McQueen was Lightning. He was never a Doc, and Doc would never be a Lightning.
Sure.
Okay, so if you're gonna start your car, you start your car, right? You start whatever you're dreaming about. And what I dreamt about was I had an impression branded upon me from when I was 5, 6, 7, 10 years old of the fabrication, the sounds, the smells of Trans Am, of that era. The early tube chassis cars, the big slicks, the Weissman gearboxes. I mean, that to me is what just gets my blood going. But a lot of people today never experience that. But what is theirs? Maybe theirs is grid life, and they see Mike DeSold running his Camaro, and they're like, "Dude, that is my jam." And they see the fuel injection and the turbos and the flames coming out the quarter panel and all this cool stuff, and that just gets them going. So you do whatever it is that matches you. Find out whatever gets you going, whatever's your inspiration. But I would encourage whatever car you're doing, whether it's a 2017 that you got salvaged, or whether it's a rotted clip of a 65 that you just believe that you're going to finish and do all the stuff to. Just do it with the mindset of letting your brain imagine. You know what I'm saying? Don't, I mean, let it happen. Do some fun things. I mean, maybe you're not a master fabricator, but maybe you make a little stereo block off plate, or maybe you make a bracket to hold your degas tank under your hood, and it's an ugly old bracket. Damn it, you made it.
And it works.
Yeah, yeah. My wife's sitting there saying, you can imagine it, have your buddy make it. If you're living in a condo complex, with today's stuff, I mean, you could draw it up on DXF, or you can go and get yourself a Fusion 360 or something like that, some more inexpensive program, and then you can send it to Send Cut Send, and they'll bend it, cut it, weld it for you, and you can have it sent to you within 5, 6 days.
Which is
Maybe that's your jam.
such a massive change from even a few years ago to have that kind of accessibility that frankly technology has enabled. I can now draft a part on my computer and have it mailed to me, within a week.
And it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, dude, but I think the thing is, whether you're gonna make your own beveled dies on your lathe and then go to your press and do it longhand and make uh, a a lightweight bracket with beveled holes and cool things, and then you rivet it and rev nut it and do all the cool things. Whether you do that or you send it off to Send Cut Send, or maybe you're just at the super base level and you're just trying different brake pads. I think the big thing with our industry is we got to support people to expand their minds, look at the root causes, the root of things. Why does it feel like this? Ask a couple extra questions. When you're off walking your dog, daydream about it. Use that daydream muscle. What if? Can I make it better? That's, I think, the big thing. And so starting a car from scratch for me, if I were to make another car right now, I don't even know, dude. I have flirting thoughts of like a GT1 Trans Am car. I have I love Can-Am, strapping a motor to your back and putting four wheels to it. That'd be pretty cool. Um, if I were to build a vintage car, I think I'm definitely a builder. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a builder because there are builders out there. I like making things. I like taking the time and learning about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm going to do. I'd probably be more on the dock side.
All right. Wow. Well, I think that was an incredibly insightful conversation. I think too often we get sort of bogged down in old versus new without really talking about the why behind it or, sort of the reasons for it. So, really a good insight to kind of dive into that, I think, and try to understand a little bit from both sides. So, anything else you want to add before we wrap up today?
No, I'm really going to think hard about growing my beard faster, combing my hair less. Um,
Just get
I
rid of your
really,
hair. It makes it even easier.
oh no, that's already naturally happening. I'm just doing the comb over for a while. I'm one of the last holdouts, and you know, I'm going to try hard not to follow your lead, but I'm going to
This
work.
is a good look, okay?
You do look good. You do look good, but I don't think a skinny guy bald is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, there's going to be even less of me.
Well, let's get the beard gone first, and then we'll talk about the hair.
Yeah, I could do pretty good chops and handlebars.
Oh, we've
Maybe
seen
that.
those chops before. Go watch the DRP Spacer video, and you'll get a nice view of those
Oh,
chops.
I forgot I had chops in that one.
I think
Really?
you did, yeah, I think you did.
That's pretty dope.
So,
Anyways, yeah, I think the big. I hope that helps people. Like at least inspires people to. I hope it inspires people to basically, you know, not be afraid of trying something. Go use your car and be you and realize there's all this great information from the background that's coming up and feeding us today. Be a student of the craft.
definitely, definitely. All right, you guys. Well, thank you, Mike, for the time this morning. As always, if you guys have any topics that you'd like us to discuss, if you've got any questions or thoughts of your own, please drop them in the comments below. We look forward to hearing from you, and we do like reading through those comments. So please kind of let us know what's on your mind. Um, Once Mike gets back from vacation, we'll be right back on top of these. I think we're going to try and record a couple to be ready to rock. But Mike, appreciate the time this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle.
We'll catch y'all here again in a couple weeks.
All right, bud. See you guys. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye bye.